Welcome to Moneyball for Pharmacists 2.0. This is a follow up to episode 354 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, which I published during the World Series back in October of 2025. The title of that episode was Moneyball for Pharmacists: Winning with Agile Teams, Not Bigger Budgets. In that episode, I said that I would like to do a follow up episode with 10 pharmacists for about 5 minutes each and ask what they consider a base hit in the pharmacy profession to be. Well, I was close. Today, you will hear from 8 pharmacists and 1 non-pharmacist. I will share the guest lineup for you once I welcome you to the show. I know I just did a cold open. Welcome to the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, where we talk about pharmacy topics and careers so you feel connected to the profession of pharmacy and inspired to contribute to it. I am your host, Ohio pharmacist Kim Newlove. This is episode 365, and you can find the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. Now, here's the lineup. Number 1 is Dr. Corey Jenks. Number 2 is Dr. Blair Thielemeyer. Number 3 is Rear Admiral Dr. Pam Schweitzer. Number 4 is Greg McKettrick, RPH. Number 5 is Jim Danahy. He is our non-pharmacist participant. Number 6 is Dr. Kimber Booth. Number 7 is Dr. Lisa Fost. Number 8 is Dr. Aaron Albert. And number 9 is Dr. Zan Syed. Thank you so much to all of my guests for helping me with this episode. I did 9 interviews in under 2 weeks. It was a little intense, but I loved it. I enjoyed the conversations, and it was so much fun catching up with colleagues right after the new year. I asked everybody the same question, which is, we all know that the base hits of yesteryear were selling prescriptions and front-end merchandise, giving flu shots, doing MTM, etc. From your point of view, what is a base hit for the pharmacy profession in the year 2026? You may actually hear me asking that question of some of the guests throughout this episode. All right, let's get into it. First up is a pharmacist who is also a comedian, a 2-time author, a podcast host, and a diabetes expert. It's Dr. Corey Jenks. Let's find out about his base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026.
Owning a small outcome. I think pharmacists, the idea of a home run is we're going to fill prescriptions and do flu shots and do all these things. What I've tried to do kind of on a micro level with my patients and then within my own practice when I was practicing was owning a small outcome. And that could mean lowering your A1C simply, or even on a smaller level. How can I improve? And I live in the world of diabetes for reference. How can we improve your breakfast? How can I get you moving 5 minutes more a day? Going very small, because these small wins are what are going to compound over time. And so, don't tell the Oakland A's that because they never won the World Series. But regardless, I think trying to focus too broadly is where we try to do too many things. We're already burnt out. So what's one small thing that you can get really good at so that when something comes up, we can turn to Kim and say, Kim is the one that does this thing the best. And it could be a little thing that can compound and have big results.
It sounds like you're talking about base hits for the patient, too.
Yes. Yeah. And I think of it from a patient's perspective. They're overwhelmed by the healthcare system. It's garbage. So to expect them to hit a home run with their health, well, how can they do that? Because they have so many inputs coming at them. They're humans just like us. They have kids, they have jobs, they have responsibilities. So I think sometimes pharmacists, we got these really big brains, we got big plans, and it can be overly complex for someone to try to do something. So we know that the best thing for you to do would be to ditch all of these things and take these 7 meds and get these 4 vaccines. But that's too much. So what can we do on a very small, simple level that they can do? Because once you get that base hit, and take it from someone who's been in many baseball slumps in his life, you get that base hit, oh my gosh, I can do this. Because when you're in a slump, you feel like you're never going to get a hit. So you get that base hit, you get a little confidence. Maybe you start thinking about, maybe I'll steal second base here. All right. And then someone else gets the base hit. You're in scoring position, you score. So it feels good. The home runs are sexy, and I wish the Cubs had more home run hitters. However, if we can avoid striking out, getting on base, moving people around the bases, we can get some nice 80s style Moneyball baseball happening, like this jacket you can't see me wearing is like an 80s Cubs jacket.
Nice. I can confirm it is a sweet jacket. Awesome. And hey, as far as making money, do you have any ideas how pharmacists can monetize those base hits?
Name me one person in the middle of an economic downturn who's the best at what they do who doesn't get paid. If you become the best at that little thing that you do, people will come to you. Now, it might not be that the large healthcare system you work for or large corporation you work for will appreciate that little thing you do really well, but you start doing this little thing really well, it's like becoming a master craftsman, craftsperson, whatever you want to call it. You get so good at something, you're going to be hard to ignore, and you will get paid for it. It might not be through insurance, it might not be through your employer, but when you're really good at something, you find a way to give value to people, you're going to get paid. It's just hard because we're in this mindset of the W-2 mindset. And as someone who's no longer a W-2 employee, I'm living this right now. So stop thinking that you're going to get paid the traditional way and wishing it were so. Wishes do not get base hits. Wishes do not win games. Doing the reps, doing the work, and being really good will get you where you need to go. And I know that's a vague non-answer because what can we do with the system to change it? I know system ain't changing for us. We've been whining about it for years. We're going to have to go step out and do our own thing. Don't stop waiting for a pinch hitter. There you go. Another baseball analogy.
I love it. All right. Bottom line, be the best at those things that your patients need.
Be the best at the little things, focus in, get really good at it, and then show the world what you can do.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts?
On baseball or pharmacy, because this is a 5-minute segment. I could go on for hours about baseball. I think that letting go of those expectations of the home run, so to speak, and thinking outside the baseball diamond. Every baseball stadium has different dimensions. We have the same rules we play by, but every outfield fence is different. So stop thinking that every hit has to be a 358-foot home run, because in Fenway Park you can pop it 328 feet over the green monster and you can get a home run. So play in a different field, look differently, and that is my sage Moneyball advice.
All right. Thanks a lot, Corey. Appreciate you. Take care.
Mm-hmm.
Bye. Here's the recap. Corey says own a small outcome. Pharmacists can monetize helping patients with those outcomes. Oh, and if you didn't catch it, Corey is a Cubs fan, the Chicago Cubs, of course. We're going to hear from each of the participants who their favorite baseball team is, Major League Baseball. Next up is Dr. Blair Thielemeyer. Hi, Blair. Welcome back to the podcast. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Kim, thank you so much for having me. My name is Blair Thielemeyer. You guys may know me from the Pharmapreneur Academy. So I've really been working, advancing the practice of pharmacy for the past decade or so with that context. And now recently, I have joined the team at PQS by Innovacer, representing the Equip Copilot product that allows pharmacists to capture and bill for enhanced services.
Thank you so much for being back here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
From your point of view, what's a base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026?
A base hit for the pharmacy profession for me has to be enhanced clinical services. So 2026, we are looking at even more opportunities to have pharmacists do quality patient interventions, things like controlling blood pressure and adherence check-ins that they can be paid for. We have these billing models that are set up to help pharmacists in the community retail setting be able to offer clinical services without having to do any additional credentialing or have medical billing training at all.
Thank you. It sounds like pharmacists are monetizing cognitive services a little bit there.
Absolutely. So cognitive services, we've always, and since I've been talking about MTM services, it's always been something that we have to go out looking for these opportunities, looking for patients to offer or test and treat or comprehensive medication reviews to. With enhanced services, these opportunities are actually being delivered to the pharmacy on an NPI level identifying high risk patients for them, all they need to do is log into their portal and look and see which patients they have enhanced service opportunities on in order to capture that additional revenue.
What's the connection point? What's the entry point for something like that?
Great question. So, for me, I've always been passionate about pharmacist led clinical services. I've been talking about medication therapy management and provider status opportunities really for the last 10 years, waiting to get provider status in my home state of Arkansas, where I'm licensed as a provider. It was a long road to really understand what clinical services we could offer as pharmacists, what CPT codes we would need to be able to bill. When I began working with the Equip dashboard, I used it primarily to identify patients that were outside of our star ratings values for these community pharmacies. And so, with that metric dashboard, what I was able to do was create clinical services in pharmacies that aligned with the goals of the payers. So, looking at how pharmacists can have an impact on patient outcomes, that was what I went to school for, was real patient care, and being able to have those different conversations to be recognized for cognitive services and reimbursed for that time that we're already spent having conversations about medication synchronization or immunization status. It really became clear that enhanced services was a pathway for pharmacists to get paid for clinical services without the need for additional licensing or training or certification in those areas. Really, just being able to leverage the skills that you already have and the things that you're already doing as a pharmacist to offer your patients this super high level of care.
If somebody wanted to learn more about monetizing enhanced services, where would they go to do that?
Pharmacyquality.com, that is where you can find out more about the Equip dashboard. We work with pharmacies all over the country, where we are currently in about 95% of all community pharmacies in the country. And these opportunities are ready and waiting for pharmacists to act on them. So, really, it's as simple as logging into the Equip dashboard and identifying these opportunities to be able to capture those interventions and create that revenue. It's a real base hit for pharmacies that don't really know where to start when it comes to clinical services, and it doesn't require any additional contracting. Likely, you are already contracted through the PSAO group if you are working in a community pharmacy. So, pharmacyquality.com is where they would go to identify what opportunities are available for them today.
All right, Blair, thank you very much for sharing what you think a base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026 is. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for being back here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
My pleasure. Take care, Blair. Blair's base hit is providing enhanced clinical services. Thanks, Blair. And by the way, Blair cheers for the St. Louis Cardinals. Our third participant is Rear Admiral Dr. Pam Schweitzer. Dr. Pam Schweitzer is a retired public health pharmacist, and she is the former Assistant Surgeon General of the United States. Let's hear from Dr. Schweitzer.
First of all, Happy New Year, Kim, and it's great to be here. Thank you for the question. I think it's a great question, and it's really timely to be able to do this at the beginning of the year when you're kind of thinking about goals and what do we want to achieve. And some of us in our personal lives are doing the same thing. So for a base hit for pharmacy right now, if you step back and look at what's happened in the last 10 years, there has been so much that's happened as far as like the pharmacy organizations have in all the states have worked to get this scope of practice for pharmacists. But the challenge has been They got scope of practice. They can now do these things. They can now get paid for doing clinical activities. But if you sit and look at how many have actually implemented, how many have executed, how many have actually moved forward and are using these tools that have now made available, very few. And I say this because I know last year we had a visit, we were talking to one of the states, and they said, well, yeah, we changed and we made it so the scope of pharmacists can do all these things. And then we asked them to go look at how many had actually implemented, and there weren't any. So that's why I'm saying, so what we all need to do, what as pharmacists, as pharmacies need to do, is a couple different areas, and these are low-hanging fruit. One, if you take a look at all the minor ailments, I call them minor ailments, but what it is actually pharmacists being able to provide clinical services, doing test and treat, handling minor ailments. Things that would be included would be, treating strep throat. I was just at a pharmacy the other day, and they said they were super busy right now with flu, doing testing and then being able to treat that. Same thing with COVID, being able to test and treat. There's UTIs and, things like pink eye, conjunctivitis. So these are all areas right now that are low hanging fruit for the states that have actually gone through and it's part of their scope of practice. So the hard part is, how do you implement it? I know everybody wants to wait and let's wait till we get provider status. Well, you have provider status. And remember, there's three different types of payers. There's Medicaid, there's private insurance like employer-based insurance, and then there's also Medicare. So Medicare is the one that we don't quite have yet, but there's still, the states can still, you can still provide all these other services, things like hormonal contraception. The other areas that pharmacists can get involved with is being involved with collaborative practice agreements. Every state authorizes those. And the question is, how do we work together to do this? Now, the hard part is, and I know one of the analogies I use all the time is climbing mountains, and we can sit and look at the mountain and see, oh, look how far we have to go. Look at all there is to do. I'll never get there. But what you do is you take one step and you go another step and another step. So, really, what to implement involves coming together. And I'll tell you, one of the first steps is to go find out who else is doing it in your state. And that's the great thing now is you're not paving the way and you're not the first one. There's so many people out there that have done things already, and you start talking to people. So maybe every 2 weeks, setting up an hour to go talk to somebody about this, how they implemented it, how they did it. So that's like step one. There might be like, I'm going to say 50 steps to be able to implement it. But then if you already have implemented it, make it better, make it smoother, make it more efficient, make it fit into the workflow better. So you can improve it too. So that's one area. Number two, and this is paving the way for what's coming down the road. With AI coming out, the pharmacist, being known and trusted, getting that relationship and not treating people like they're like a transaction, but treating them like you have a relationship with them, building that trust among them. So to do that, being able to help them put together their medication list. Now more than ever, if they're not in the health system setting, the chances are you don't have their full list. And the patients don't come in and sit down and say, can you help me sort out my medications? But think of what's coming down the pipeline. It's already here now. It just hasn't rolled out, but you can start getting ready for this. Helping the patients get their own medication list, maybe on an app. And then if you sit down with someone and can help them figure out how their day is organized, when they eat their meals, doing this, helping them set that all up so that they can manage their own medications and be able to own using AI. AIs can help with all of this, helping to know, oh, you should separate this by an hour because you're eating at this time, or, getting the times all set up. So being able to know that, let the patients know that you're the one that can help them get their medication list and get it organized together, because we can prevent so many interactions. And this is what we were trained for. Think of all the times back in school, you spend time going through and cleaning up someone's medication list. But right now, it's just patients come in, get their medication filled, and then go off, and you don't really see the full list because you don't know all the places they're getting their medications. And then another area is vaccines. what ends up happening right now is people come in and the same thing, there's apps, there's ways that patients can manage their own vaccine list. And they're told right now, they are told by the health department to go talk to the pharmacist or go talk to a provider to help you get your vaccine list current. But the question is, how many people do that? How many people are getting that, helping the patients get that list current? Because then again, that could be tied to all these other applications. It could be tied to even your pharmacy so that you would know and help remind them when they need something. These are just real simple. We should be doing these already. We should be doing this. So the areas are medication list, helping them with their medication list. The other one is with helping them with their vaccines and getting that current. And if you're a state that has an app, help them use that app because they're trying to do this right now on their own, patients are. And then the first one is implementing minor ailments clinical program at your facility.
You're basically saying that pharmacists can help patients and practice at the top of their licenses and get paid to help implement some of these programs. They have permission to do these things, but there's maybe some hesitation or there's not a connection between having permission to do it and actually doing it. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, correct. And thank you for bringing that up because I'm all the things I mentioned, they already they could get paid for. So I only mentioned things they could be paid for. They just aren't implementing it yet. So, yes.
Yep. Helping pharmacists turn the key. That's a base hit.
Yes.
I love it. All right, Pam, thank you so much for coming back to the Pharmacist Voice podcast for the Moneyball episode. And just as a quick question here, who's your favorite Major League Baseball team?
I have to say the Diamondbacks, even though they don't win every year because, I've gone to so many of their games.
All right, thank you very much. And Happy New Year to you.
Thank you so much.
And here's the recap. Dr. Pam Schweitzer's base hit is turning permission into action. Next up is my fellow Detroit Tigers fan, Greg McKettrick, RPH. Greg is a men's health specialist and a compounding pharmacist. Let's hear from Greg. From your point of view, what's a base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026?
Generating cash flow revenue, non-insurance, non-PBM, work on avenues that will not only pay you, but make you happy. Find your niche and then dive into it. So get away from just billing insurance because all it's going to do is close your shop up. Start doing things that are going to actually really increase your profit base and your patient base as well, and helpfully make your life a lot more enjoyable. That can be consultations. That can be, again, cash-based revenue streams, whether that be supplements, devices. Like myself, I get into some kind of other options like the peptides and whatnot. So there's just a whole world of different opportunities for your independent pharmacies. Partner up with a facility like myself where we offer the central fill, where your independent pharmacy can now offer compounded medications to patients. There are so many options that people just are not aware of yet that we really need to kind of put out there to the full public.
In your opinion, what are some good ways for pharmacists listening to this today to find out and educate themselves? Find out about these things you're talking about and educate themselves.
Well, personally, I work with several different companies, but I represent RX Connection, which does a great job on introducing telehealth services into independent pharmacies, as well as the central fill. So that's a great place to start. I partner with a lot of folks. I do a lot of information exchange on services like the different websites, but LinkedIn. I get a ton of inquiries through there for folks who are looking for help. They're looking for advice. So find the experts that really are associated in the field that you're most interested in. Or if you're not sure, reach out to myself or someone that is really doing this and trying to compound the different avenues that you can generate your profits in.
I like that answer. It's not always what they need to do, it's who they need to know.
Yep.
Excellent advice. Anything else to add before I let you go?
You know what? My whole thing with this, and I'll be flat out honest with you, Kim, we as a profession have become so chained to the bench and chained to the PBMs and insurance, and it is a death sentence for pharmacies. You're seeing pharmacies close at a rate that is never happened in our own history before. That's why I make such a point of trying to talk to the independent pharmacies in particular and introduce them to some of these different revenue streams, whether that be, hey, bring telehealth into your pharmacy so you can actually really maximize your profits and build your patient base. Partner and do central fill so you can offer compounded, hazardous, IV, sterile compounds from your pharmacy. Find your niche, get into consulting, but don't be just a random. MTM is fine, but really MTM, you're still a slave to the insurance companies. So focus. Personally, I do a lot of men's health, I do sexual medicine, I do hormone optimization, weight loss. Find these things that you have an interest in, that your public has the interest in, and then really get jump started on that, because that's where you're going to see a big difference.
Part of what I'm hearing you say is it's not all about dispensing, right?
No, absolutely not. And again, dispensing is fine. We all need to do that. We want to maintain that business. We want to take care of patients. They have insurance. They want to use the insurance, but offer them options. Introduce them to some of these different forms. Again, if they're a patient who is interested in, maybe they're a man with ED, a woman with hormone issues. Introduce them to the world of compounding and explain to them where these benefits lie and how these can really maximize the benefit for them and what their outcomes are, and then start incorporating some of these different avenues. Good supplements, really great supplements that can partner with these things, and supplements can be a great revenue stream. And like I said, for lack of anything else, or for lack of a better place to start, reach out to folks like myself who really live in this realm. And I'm always happy to entertain anybody. And Kim, you can share my information at any time.
Will do. I'll put that in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. Thanks so much, Greg, for coming back to the show.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
See you later.
Here's the recap. Greg says, find a unique niche you enjoy and generate cash flow and revenue through avenues beyond insurance and PBMs. Broaden your patient base and your profit base, says Greg. All right, thanks, Greg, and go Tigers. We're on to the fifth base hitter here. Let's hear from Jim Danahy. Jim is the only non-pharmacist participating in the Moneyball 2.0 episode today. Jim and I have talked privately about Moneyball for Pharmacists for a couple of years. We've had some great conversations, and I enjoy his perspective and ideas. I hope you do as well. Take it away, Jim.
My name is Jim Danahy. I'm the founder of a firm called AdhereRx and a serial owner of community pharmacies. So we work with large organizations and chains to help them mostly with clinical productivity, and we operate our own pharmacies from coast to coast in Canada.
Thanks for the introduction. Now let's get into the question. We all know that the base hits of yesteryear were selling prescriptions and front-end merchandise, giving flu shots and doing MTM and all the 9 yards there. From your point of view, what is a base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026?
I love the question. And you and I have kicked this around for a few years. I love the baseball analogy too. So the notion of getting on base has a direct equivalent, we believe, from baseball into pharmacy. So think about getting on base. The on base percentage, or the OBP, is something that runs around 320 to 330. So about a third of the time, Major League Baseball players get on base. And the very best baseball player of all time in getting on base was a guy named Ted Williams from the Boston Red Sox. And he was just under half the time. His on-base percentage was 482. And there is actually a way of operating full-time as a pharmacist, not a pill counter, not a checker, not doing things that don't require your license for which you're paid a good wage, but working full-time as a pharmacist to work 100% of your time as a pharmacist. And so by contrast, it's just worth noting that time and motion studies in the US, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, and most of Northern Europe indicate that the average pharmacist spends about 7% of their workday doing tasks that require their license. That's 33 minutes in an 8-hour shift. That's 4 minutes per hour being on duty. The rest of the time could be done by people making somewhere between a half and a third what a pharmacist is paid. There's the hard money. And it means it's robbing patients of care that can only be delivered by that person with the license, right? So there's 56 minutes out of every hour that you're not practicing as a pharmacist. So there is actually a way of working called pharmacist at intake, where you take the pharmacist out of the back and you put them on first base. First base is a desk in a chair at the front of the pharmacy, like a triage desk in a hospital, where they're doing exactly the same scope of practice pharmacists have been doing in hospitals for 30 years, since ISO 9000 and Six Sigma was applied. And those audits were done on what people's roles and responsibilities ought to do. They invented a new role called registered pharmacy technicians that took checking away from pharmacists. They brought in automation and machines so that the pharmacist did what only the pharmacist can do. And about 10, 15 years ago, some independent pharmacies, in my country at least, started putting a desk and chair out front. And that pharmacist was on first base to begin with. I ended up meeting one of these pharmacies a year or so after they started that. This was in 2012. I met them in 2013. And then we just started following, well, so what happened? And what happened was this pharmacy tripled their prescription count without hiring a single new person or bringing in new patients. They weren't even at that time billing fees. There was the equivalent, the Canadian equivalent of an NPM, and a couple of minor fees, but there weren't fees to charge. What they were doing was what we call, in the broader sense, medication management as a practice, not an occurrence or a billing code, where you're just doing that all day. You're identifying and solving drug therapy problems, and holy cats, patients were able to take their medication. And this pharmacy, instead of doing the global average of about 50% adherence to the chronic medications that were being prescribed, jumped up to almost 90 and sustained it. They deprescribed the stuff that wasn't needed, and they were just looking after their patients, but doing triple the business.
Thank you so much for sharing that. How do we do that, Jim?
You build a desk and chairs, Kim. Honestly, it's not patented. There is no regulator in the world that tells you can't do it. There is no payer in the world that tells you can't do it. There are some factors that are different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and your country in particular. Actually, adherence to some drugs actually costs you money because you have uneven reimbursement for drugs, which doesn't exist anywhere else. But other than that, just be a pharmacist. Do you change the roles, put the desk out front, and get started. You could start next Monday.
Very good. And we're talking about community pharmacy, right? Retail pharmacy.
Any community pharmacy of any size, chain, independent, urban, rural, you name it.
All right. Thank you very much for your thoughts. And can I ask you real quick, personal question? Do you have a favorite Major League Baseball team?
I'm a little biased, but yeah, the Toronto Blue Jays.
I don't doubt that. All right, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. You take care.
It's my pleasure, Kim. Thanks for having me.
All right, you heard it. Jim's base hit is the pharmacist at intake model. Get a community pharmacist in a chair at a desk in front of the pharmacy, like a triage desk. Pharmacist at intake. I like it. Next up is Dr. Kimber Booth. Kimber is 6th on my roster and also a fellow Ohio pharmacist and a fellow Metapreneur. We met at Metapreneurs back in 2018, I think. Let's hear from Kimber.
I'm a pharmacist, a healthcare leader, and an entrepreneur. I've been worked in health systems, the pharma industry, and for the last 11 years, I've had a business, and for 6 years, I've been doing it full time. I serve our profession through strategic management consulting to create strategic plans and business plans to advocate for resources. And I also support individuals through one-on-one career coaching and online courses and memberships to help advance pharmacy practice.
That is a mouthful. And once upon a time, I heard you say that one of your taglines is pharmacy can do more with more. Is that still the case?
It sure is. It sure is. And it ties into our topic today. I wanted to talk about that related to our topic, but that continues to be my tagline. Pharmacy can do more with more. It is what helped to spur me to leave my health system to pursue entrepreneurship full time, because I had advocated for a lot of resources at several different health systems I worked with, and created over 150 positions at a few health systems, and I wanted to have that impact and help more other people do that. And the only way I felt that I could do that was to focus on it full time.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear your answer to my question here. I'll just ask it. We all know that the base hits of yesteryear were selling prescriptions and front end merchandise, giving flu shots, doing MTM, and all the things. From your point of view, doing more with more, what is a base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026?
Well, thank you, Cam, and I love this topic. I have to say, when I first heard that you had done this as a topic, I love the opportunity to make analogies and learn from other areas of life, the world. I've done some training like that Disney has done on patient experience. I've looked at workflow in how a workflow is done on a cruise line and how they manage the food and in the productivity of that. And in this case, I think it's a great analogy. And I've also had some experience. My kids here in Cincinnati, they've had the opportunity to go to the Cincinnati Reds Stadium, where they actually facilitated, in addition to the tours and all of that fun stuff, they did facilitate a session where they had to choose a team, and based on different numbers and what they could afford. And then they ran, they did additional challenges too. They threw us curveballs of oh, this player got injured, or so. Anyways, I've had some fun experience with this, but I had never really truly equated it to pharmacy. So I love it. Well, what came to my mind was really thinking about the care team, and thinking about the whole baseball team being like the care team, and that we really need to get pharmacists and pharmacy technicians as core members of that care team. And so bringing in that skill set to the team. And so when you think about the base hit and the actual measure of that, I do think that the clinical outcomes that we provide and having encounters with pharmacists is probably maybe some of those initial base hits, because I think in the movie, they talk about, of course, you need to have the base hit, then you need to have the runs batted in, then you need to have the win, and you also have to have the defensive aspect. So you have to not allow runs to come in. So I do think there's a variety of things that we do, including vaccines, honestly. So I do think that there are things that we will need to do. But I think at its purest level, I would say, if I had to say one thing, I do think that having encounters with a pharmacist, where the pharmacist is able to provide comprehensive care to that patient, whether it is MTM or what I like to have these days is more truly collaborative care, working under a collaborative practice agreement, where that pharmacist is not just monitoring and assessing things, but they're actually able to order the labs, change the medication doses, and even order new medications if the patient needs it. So my version of the base hit is encounters with pharmacists, where they are part of the collaborative care team working under collaborative practice agreements.
Okay, so you want to put pharmacists in doctors' offices? Is that kind of your idea?
Not necessarily. I do think that actually putting pharmacists in doctors' office could be a challenge. So, of course, I work a lot with health systems, and they have a lot of their own doctor's office, of course, that are affiliated with the health system. Unfortunately, we probably don't have enough pharmacists to put in every doctor's office. So just the number of pharmacists compared to the number of physicians is challenging. So I do think with the advent of telehealth and other interventions, I do think this could be done by the community pharmacy as well. I think that there is a lot of initiatives happening where it's not just basic MTM, but it is more collaborative. The key for community pharmacy team members is they need access to information. So it is easier for me where most of my practice is supporting health systems, because the pharmacists that are supporting those clinics who get the referral, they may be working out of a centralized clinic and supporting 5 clinics. They may be getting referrals from 10 different doctors for the sickest patients where they're managing them. But they have access to electronic health record. And right now, where there has been some initiatives to allow some pharmacy organizations, community and retail chain pharmacies have gotten team members access to the electronic health record, that is a little bit limited right now. So I think it can be embedded, or integrated is another word I tend to use, integrated clinical services, where you're maybe working in a centralized clinic model as well.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your thoughts on that. And I've got to ask as we close this out, do you have a favorite Major League Baseball team?
Well, growing up, the New York Mets were my favorite team. Growing up in Connecticut, it was always hard. I felt it was hard because, and I know this is a long answer to your question, but being in Connecticut, we didn't have our own team. So you had fans on your street that were Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, or New York Mets. So there was a lot of infighting. And so I definitely loved the New York Mets, went to a lot of the games. My dad actually was lucky enough to get a lot of box seats for whatever reason, for his job. And then when I moved here to Cincinnati 8 years ago, we've definitely become fans of the Cincinnati Reds. They're right here. And for the most part, we are a cohesive group of fans here in the greater Cincinnati area. We support our Cincinnati Reds. So I will have to say I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan now.
All right. You're a convert, right?
I have.
That's cool. Well, thank you for sharing that personal detail. And thank you for coming back to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Take care, Kimber.
Thanks.
Kimber's base hit is patient encounters with pharmacists who are working under collaborative practice agreements. Thanks, Kimber. We'll hear from a fellow podcaster and author next. Here's Dr. Lisa Fost.
I am Dr. Lisa Fost, commonly referred to as the Pharmacy Badass. I am a pharmacy owner myself. I've been a pharmacist, since 2001, over 25 years now. I'm getting old. I think I'm going to stop with just over 25 years. I currently own 2 pharmacies, and I just love helping pharmacy owners run their pharmacies profitably and without chaos. And so I live every day in independent pharmacy.
Thanks for the introduction. And I think you and I graduated from pharmacy school the same year, but I had a bachelor's program. So, University of Toledo College of Pharmacy class of 2001.
Graduated 2001, yep. But I did the 2-year undergrad, 3 years. So I did it all in 5 years. I was a little crazy.
Much respect, and it counts. From your point of view, what's a base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026?
I say anything that has to do with peptides. That is just such a buzzword. It has been for the last 2 years, but I honestly think we're only at the tip of the iceberg. As more and more peptides get approved, who knows what's going to happen with, the current administration. There's a lot of rumors that they're going to be actually approving a bunch more peptides, at least for the compounders to be able to compound. But there's this huge, wide open world of peptides. And there's the prescription kind that many of us are familiar with, like the GLP-1s. There's the over the counter kind, which there are peptides available over the counter. There's this whole middle gray area of research grade, unapproved kind of stuff. And frankly, I think it's the pharmacist, and in particular, the independent pharmacy owner's job to know about this, to have a frame of reference, to be able to help their patients, because their patients are getting inundated with all different kinds of things from social media, from friends. Even my 15-year-old nephew texted me the other day and says, "Hey, Aunt Lisa, a lot of my, friends are talking about peptides for this and for that. What do you think about this?" And so it is from the old to the young. And so I really think the base hit nowadays, from now until many years from now, is going to be anything and everything to do with peptides.
Very timely answer. In fact, just today, I was looking in a Facebook group that I'm part of, and the one of the admins for the group was asking, where's everybody getting their GLP-1s? And it wasn't all pharmacies.
Nope. Yeah, absolutely. And so I even wrote a book on peptides specifically for pharmacists because I think pharmacists should be able to answer those questions and be able to help their patients, even if they can't legally dispense something, to be able to guide them into proper use. Because I think that's our role, right? We're supposed to help people achieve their health outcomes. And just because our government doesn't happen to prove something doesn't mean that people don't have access. We live in a global society now in terms of drug supply chain, and if they can't come to their local trusted pharmacist where they get all of their normal commercial stuff to get those questions answered, they're going to be asking on Facebook, they're going to be asking ChatGPT, they're going to be asking other places. And I still think that we need to be that expert that people come to get their questions answered. And it's only going to grow from here. Like I said, we're at the tip of the iceberg. Pharma is just pumping out anything peptide related, like that's what's coming out. And so, people are ordering drugs from Alibaba and from, China and all these other places. It's like we need to be the voice of reason also for our counterparts in healthcare. Doctors, I've seen them get, bamboozled themselves because they don't know quite the rules, they don't know quite the laws. And so they go to some meeting where they learn about a bunch of stuff and think they could just start prescribing it. And so I just think from our patient perspective, from fellow healthcare practitioners, that pharmacists need to own the peptide expert label, if you will. And whether that means if we're dispensing it or not, we should be fully knowledgeable. But that's what our patients want, right? I mean, sometimes we want to give them broccoli, but they want chocolate, right? It's like we got to direct them in the way to do it properly. And so that's what consumers want. And so I think that's what we need to do. So I think that's the base hit.
Great answer. How do pharmacists that don't know about peptides educate themselves about them? Because you mentioned there's all kinds of different suppliers out there. People are asking questions. What's the first step for pharmacists?
I think there's a couple of ways to educate yourself. I started educating myself by clicking on all those ads, right? Starting to go to those websites, starting to read a bunch of things. I have a little bit of different perspective being originally from California. You know, People in California were talking about peptides 20 years ago. So it wasn't as maybe a new and foreign kind of concept as it is for a lot of pharmacists now. But just start to educate yourself just like you do in anything else, right? Like you just start to consume information. Then go to the places that are formal education. There's great places like BHRT Academy. I do a lot of adjunct teaching for them. I wrote a book for pharmacists, Practical Peptides for Pharmacists. There's lots of free, websites where you can go, and there's, Wikipedia and other things where you're just really starting to learn. Obviously, pharmacists, I think you need to know dose. You need to know side effects. You need to know contraindications, just like any other drug. I think it's important that you treat these, whether they're classified by the FDA as an approved drug or unapproved drug. I think if we as pharmacists approach them to learning about them as a drug, then I think that makes it easier for our brains to just consume it because it's familiar. And so I think if you do that, then at least you're being able to respond to those questions. But I Facebook algorithm probably thinks I'm a hypochondriac because I click on anything and I read it all because I want to know what people are being presented with. And that's one of the best ways to start getting exposure and to learn.
Great advice. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And now I'm going to switch topics here and ask you, do you happen to have a favorite Major League Baseball team?
I don't currently watch baseball. I do generally like sports, but for some reason I got away from baseball. But when you say baseball team and favorite, I go immediately back to my childhood, and it's the Dodgers because I grew up in California. And Mike Piazza is the catcher. I so remember that we had a minor league team in Bakersfield, the Bakersfield Dodgers. And I remember one time, I think he was injured or something. And so he got put down in the minor leagues for a couple of games. And I remember going and being able to see him in person. And so, those are my happier memories of baseball. Quite a long ways ago, but that's definitely who I think of when you say favorite baseball team.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. You're not the only one that goes back to their childhood when they talk about the baseball team that they're affiliated with. I've had a few other responses like that. All right. Thank you, Dr. Lisa Fost, for being here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Happy New Year to you, and thanks again.
Thank you. Have a wonderful 2026.
Quick recap. Lisa's base hit is anything and everything to do with peptides. Thanks, Lisa. And then there were two. We've only got two pharmacists left. We've got Dr. Aaron Albert and then Dr. Zan Syed. Quick introduction here. Dr. Aaron Albert is the Chief of Pharmacy Relations, Network, and Privacy at Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Company. Let's hear from Aaron. What's a base hit for the pharmacy profession in the year 2026?
Well, of course, I have to preface this with the fact that I work for Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Company. So I think the baseline hit here is for retail open door and long-term care facility pharmacies to consider joining our pharmacy network. I have a lot of reasons why, and I'm happy to go through those with you today if you'd like.
Absolutely. How can pharmacies make money and do better in 2026?
Yeah, well, we all know that pharmacies are closing their doors. We have pharmacy deserts in some spots of the country now. And I think one of the remedies here is to ensure that pharmacies are rightfully paid for their valuable services. Through the Cost Plus Drugs affiliate pharmacy network that my team have been building over the course of the past several years now, we have in place assurities that pharmacies are actually getting paid for their valuable services. In that, number one, we have a baseline dispensing fee per prescription of $12. We have no things like clawbacks or worries about retrospective fees being paid back. We have both cash pay and we have now our pharmacy pricing and our pharmacy network integrated into more transparent PBMs for an offering to self-funded employers to getting at what our ultimate goal was all along in serving those self-funded employers. We have direct access to a supply chain in that we have Cost Plus Drugs Marketplace available to any of our pharmacies in our network so they can buy drugs at the actual acquisition costs for reimbursement. There's no putting them underwater. And then we've got other reasons too. On the funded side, the pharmacies actually now retain the 15% markup in addition to the actual acquisition cost of the drug plus the dispensing fee. So, in addition to all the other reasons like increased traffic to your pharmacies, like high deductible health plan folks looking for those higher cost drugs and solutions when their deductibles have reset for the new year, there are plenty of great reasons why pharmacies should consider joining our network.
Thank you. Yes, you can't argue with numbers. I feel like you're giving people an opportunity to examine these costs that you're talking about, the dispensing fee, right? So, prescription volume might be, for example, 400 prescriptions a day times, you said, $12 per prescription. So, a pharmacy that does 400 prescriptions, if those are all Team Cuban card drugs, they could make what, $4,800 per day from dispensing fees alone? As opposed to they could take a look at what they're getting now. Would you recommend that they compare things?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, in our current newsletter that goes out to our network, we've done some of those actual real world comparisons and shown the difference between funded plans using larger PBMs that don't have our network and our pricing integrated versus our own under leases with more transparent PBMs. And we're saving plans and patients significantly more on particularly those high cost specialty generics like the imatinibs of the world that our CEO Dr. Alex and Mark himself talk a lot about. But also we're saving on those regular maintenance drugs, the atorvastatins of the world, the lisinoprils, things like that that are ongoing maintenance meds that you really wouldn't think would be in desperate need of more transparent pricing. And yet that's happening each and every day with the Team Cuban card as well as through the funded lease network opportunities.
Is there any advice that you have for pharmacists who don't already take part of the Team Cuban card or any of the other things that you mentioned, like buying drugs at acquisition cost, I believe you mentioned? What's the way to switch them from not participating to participating? I mean, what are some good reasons to switch?
I don't think it's either or. I think it's both, Kim, in that folks can actually sign up for the Cost Plus Drugs Marketplace regardless of whether or not they're part of our Cost Plus Drugs affiliate pharmacy network. And I'm happy to share the link with you, as well as the link to learn more about joining the actual network. I think pharmacists overall, if they want to survive and thrive, particularly in the community practice setting, They need to offer their patients as many options as possible to get to the most transparent, affordable options for patients, especially now when a third or more Americans that are lucky enough to have commercial healthcare plans are on high deductible plans, meaning that they've got to pay out of pocket 100% until they meet their deductible on many prescription funded, self funded plans, even. So, if pharmacies don't have all the tools in their quiver to provide to their patients as options for getting to the most affordable price, they're going to be missing out.
Well, I think you've brought up some great solutions for pharmacists. This is a definitely a base hit. I feel like pharmacists could stop paying so much to acquire medications through your program that you were talking about. And then also patients can stop paying so much because they don't know what their alternatives are. And we as pharmacists can present them with these alternatives.
Absolutely. And the most successful pharmacies in our network, in fact, do that. They are proactive about sharing that we have the Team Cuban card, the Cost Plus Drugs Affiliate Pharmacy Network, and yet it is another option or opportunity for patients to save on their prescription drugs. Whether that's, a senior patient that lives at home, and the adult child is in charge of their medications and trying to keep them out of a facility, to someone pre-retirement who doesn't qualify for Medicare yet, but is kind of in that gap between full-time employment and having a self-funded plan versus going to Medicare. They have to pay out of pocket. To anybody that just, loses their insurance for short periods of time. I think there's lots of opportunities to save, but if pharmacy doesn't know what they don't know, then they can't educate their patients. And let's be honest, pharmacy, more than anything these days, we are all teachers, essentially. We are all educators.
Yes, absolutely. We need to pick up that educator ball and run with it for sure. All right, Aaron, thank you very much for your thoughts. And as we close this up here, can I ask, do you happen to have a favorite Major League Baseball team?
I don't. I wish I did, but I don't. Maybe the Cubs, because I grew up near Chicago and it's almost kind of a nihilistic pick, but I'll go with the Cubs.
I love hearing you laugh. Thank you so much for laughing. And thanks for coming back here to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Take care.
You too. Thanks.
Sounds like Aaron's base hit is giving pharmacies and patients transparent pricing options. Now, on to the ninth and final interview. It's Dr. Zan Syed.
My name is Zan Sayed. I am currently a product manager at Cencora. I am the head of their clinical products. But prior to this, I worked as an oncology pharmacist for almost 10 years in a outpatient clinic setting.
From your point of view, what's a base hit for the pharmacy profession in the year 2026?
I thought about this a little bit. I think for a base hit for the pharmacy profession, I think would just be being visible to our patients, to and all staff in the hospital, so on and so forth. It's just being visible and then available. I think that we spend too much time in quote unquote the basement or behind the desk. This mythical figure that exists somewhere. But I think just being in front of people, visually in front of people, is what we can do to get that base hit in 2026.
What setting or settings do you think that applies most to?
I think almost every setting. I mean, I think the most visibility that people have and people associate with pharmacy is retail. And the main reason for that is why? Because you physically see the pharmacist, right? A lot of people don't know pharmacists are sitting in the floors in the hospital setting, even in clinics, in the back offices. Not saying one setting is better than the other, but I think that you're more likely to ask a question when you know somebody's there physically in front of you, right? And I think that's something that we do a disservice to our profession in general. You're starting to see it in retail as well, where pharmacists are not really visible. They're kind of not because they don't want to be, just because there's so much work that they have to do in the back end, right? So I'm not saying it's easy, because you need to kind of figure out, okay, what work can be put onto the tax and so on and so forth to streamline a lot of things. But I think for me, just visibility in any and all settings, because once people find out, and I'm sure the pharmacists that are listening to it, once people find out you're a pharmacist, all of a sudden there's like a list of questions that come out, because they know that, hey, pharmacist equals they know drugs, right? So, but if they don't know you are, or you do even exist in the setting, they're going to ask somebody else, and that's in my eyes, not the right thing to do, especially when you're in the setting, right? They should be asking us about drug related questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking that a step further. And then one more step further, any thoughts on monetizing?
Yeah, I mean, I think monetizing is a interesting thing. For me, it's like a double-edged sword, right? So you have we on one end you have like, healthcare is getting really expensive, and then everyone is trying to monetize something. I do think there are places for pharmacists to monetize, like like I mean, there's the standard like low-hanging fruit like MTM services or just things like that. I think that obviously I'm not this is no like people are probably like, well, duh, right? We've been trying this for a long time, but I think that we've been trying it for a long time and still haven't gotten there yet, right? I mean, and then there's also like prescriptive authority out there as well. I mean, I think there's arguments on both sides. I want the profession to go forward, whatever the best way that is. But I mean, in terms of monetizing, I think we, again, that kind of goes back to being visible, right? I think people need to understand what value we bring. I think a lot of times we fall back on, well, if you have a pharmacist, it saves X amount of dollars, right? But to most people, when somebody says, "Hey, we just saved you $10," versus you making $10, those are two very different things, right? So we almost can't even approach that conversation unless we actually make ourselves visible and show people what value we can bring, right? Like first we have to make other people's jobs easier, then we can kind of go on and say, okay, now we can get paid for it. But we're trying to jump a bunch of steps before we can get there. And I'm not saying it's easy. I was there in the front lines on the clinical side, and there was a lot of stuff that we had that I didn't want to do, but we did it because it was kind of like a stepping stone to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And I think just the profession is so far behind in visibility that we have to do a lot of this grunt work that honestly we don't want to do, but we kind of have to do. Kind of we have to put in the work first, and then we can kind of get to that point because then we'll have other people maybe even we shouldn't wait on other professions to advocate for us, but we should do our own advocacy. But maybe doctors and things will come be like, hey, it'd be really nice to have you guys, like let's work something out. So
Yeah, it's one thing for us to promote ourselves. It actually makes us look more valuable, I think, when other people tout how valuable we are, whether it's a doctor or a
exactly.
patient. When we put ourselves out in front of the patients, we're naturally going to help them live healthier lives. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, so kind of on the analogy that I was thinking about a home run, and I don't even know if this is a home run, but I think one thing to me a home run would be I think the profession uniting under one organization, right? Whatever letters you want to pick, whatever you want to call it. I think right now I think the pharmacy profession is very fractured in its current state. There's a lot of different organizations, a lot of competing priorities all over the place, and if anyone knows, if you're trying to pass 10 different things, zero of them are going to get passed. I think we need to all come together. Doesn't matter what profession you're in AmCare, you're in retail, you're in clinic, you're in this, you're that, whatever umbrella of pharmacy fall under, in the end, we're all pharmacists and we need to come together as pharmacists to kind of help push the profession forward. So that to me is kind of that home run where we all just come together and unite and kind of use the nursing model where they walk under basically one banner. I mean, they have different organizations, but they basically are walking under one flag, and they're able to push their weight around because they have the power and the numbers. And I think that pharmacists can do that as well. And I'm not saying that in like a bend to my will type thing. It's more like a hey, we provide this value and we should be valued as such, right? And I think that pharmacy, we are internally know how much value we bring. It's just we are very bad at showing that to the outside world. And I think part of that is just coming under one flag and really trying to push legislature or just programs or whatever that benefit this pharmacist, not a specific type of pharmacist, but all pharmacists.
I like the message of unity and having one voice.
I think just throughout history, you see, I mean, not just in medical profession, but like the people that are united the most are the ones that get further the fastest. And this is not about speed or whatever, but you're able to accomplish more if you can come under one collective voice.
I know that you really like technology and AI. I challenge you to take all of these ideas and put them into ChatGPT or whatever your model that you like is and ask, how can we unify the pharmacy profession and have just one voice? Who knows? Sometimes AI comes up with amazing ideas.
Yeah, I know. Maybe some of your listeners can come and give us some of those answers as well. I think that'd be kind of fun to see what people come up with. But yeah, no, definitely. I think that. But yeah, I mean, it's yeah. I think it's something it's needed. It's been a long time coming, and it just needs to happen. I'm sure there's somebody out there much smarter than me, much more charismatic than I am that can get it done. I know that there's someone out there.
Your voice is important too. And I appreciate you sharing your voice here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast today. And I got to close out with a question I've been asking most people. What is your favorite MLB baseball team at this point?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago. So I was indoctrinated as a Cubs fan, so I would say the Cubs.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming back to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Have a great 2026.
Thank you so much, Cam. I really appreciate it, as you as well.
Thank you. Quick recap, I would say that Zan's base hit is visibility, being visible and accessible. Thanks, Zan. Now I'll give you my base hit and I'll make it super quick here. I would say that my base hit for the pharmacy profession in 2026 is identifying gaps in healthcare and filling them. We have permission, like Dr. Schweitzer said. We just need to do the dang thing. As far as monetizing, I'm with Corey. People generally throw money at solutions that work. In closing, I would say, pharmacists, here's my call to action. Let's get on base and let's have a productive 2026. Thank you for listening to episode 365 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. You can find the show notes on thepharmacistsvoice.com. In the show notes, you will find the LinkedIn links for all of my guests and many of the people, places, and things mentioned as well. Next week is my last weekly episode in my 6-year run hosting this podcast. It is my 6-year podcast anniversary show. I am switching from a weekly schedule to a monthly schedule next month in February 2026. You can sign up for my newsletter to get an email each time a new episode comes out. Keep in touch. Share this episode with your colleagues and subscribe to or follow this podcast for all future episodes. Thank you so much for listening today. This was a fun episode, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks again to my guests.